Hi, it's Hazel, and welcome to my channel, Hazel Anaka Design. Full disclosure, warning, viewer warning. This is going to be a long and, well, I expect it'll be a longish, rambling video. I had a viewer, a friend who's also a subscriber, reach out to me via email asking a question. And I said to her, I think that there might be other people interested in my take, my answer. So how about if I just, pick a mindless task to keep my hands busy and use the video time to answer your question. So that's what this is all about. But of course, I'm going to throw in some life stories as well. Excuse me. Okay, so if you're trying to decide if you should stay or not, the question was, I internalized it. I added another component. The question was, where do you sell your stuff? I backed that up, half a step to when is a person ready to begin selling? And I will just tell you, I guess I said I was going to keep my hands busy, didn't I? Okay, before I get to that, let me tell you that it's Saturday, it's March 8th, and I thought, why don't I do a couple of loads of laundry? So at one point, I happened to be walking past the dryer, and I noticed that it had stopped, but there was still 5 minutes left on the timer. Now, this is a 2018 Maytag, so, it wasn't a knockoff brand, and it's not very old. So, what's up? When I opened the dryer, the clothes were so hot that I could literally have burned it was uncomfortable. I couldn't touch them. And all these little dresses that I showed you in a recent thrift video were part of what was in that load. So I think because the dryer didn't go through its final, whole cycle, the part where it kind of, where it avoids setting wrinkles didn't happen. So I didn't bother ironing any of these things, but, it should have come out looking better than this. Anyway, I'm very vigilant. I clean the lint screen every time, blah, blah, blah. I found the manual. I looked it up. I tried what they said in the troubleshooting guide. When my husband came home from town and washing the car, I said, he still had his shoes and jacket on. I said, go and check the outside, the little vent that goes to the outside. Well, there was nothing there to see either. So unfortunately, I guess I will be calling somebody early next week to book a service call. So what I intend to do as I'm talking about this person's question is show how I would deconstruct some of these things to make them usable in junk journal projects. So I'm not going to, I did talk about some of the options. Oh, see, this looks terrible. Now, those flowers, well, maybe not that terrible. I would have to steam this to make it lie down better than it is. Anyway, I'm not probably going to tackle a tough one like this today. I do have a couple other dresses that have that crinoline type material, and maybe just to make things a bit easier to see, I will start with the simplest one, which is just a little cotton one. This one has the partial slip type thing with the little crinoline material. This is the one with the lovely overlay, the lovely overlay and the geranium colored lining here. And this, of course, was the one that had the beautiful peonies. And it too has a little crinoline thing. So with this one, I was intending to, now, normally I think I probably would have ironed this stuff first. I guess, well, let me change that. A person could go either way. You could either iron it first, knowing that you're probably going to crease and scrunch it up a bit in the handling of it. And if you open up any seams, obviously you're going to have to go back and iron those flat. Or you can do it as I'm doing here out of necessity, which is doing it before it's been ironed. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Now, the other thing, before I start on this little dress, my husband, who is very reluctant to throw anything out, shows me this windbreaker of his. And it's an Alfred Sung. I don't think he's had it that long, but look, it's got this crappy vinyl-y collar detail, and that has cracked. So, of course, nobody in their right mind is going to wear this out in public like that. So I said, well, you know what? This lining is kind of nice. And look at the sleeves. So at some point, not today, I will salvage what I can from here. Now the outside, it's kind of twill type material. Anyway, I don't think you'd be that thrilled watching me do this. And it's obviously bigger, and it's going to be harder or less useful stuff. So just throw that on a pile, deal with that another day. Now, all I have, I should probably bring in my scissors. I have kind of a puny, I should have looked for a big, like an adult size. Oh, here it is. Seam ripper. I don't know if these things ever dull to the point where they should be thrown out, but you can see there is a size difference. I have many of these. Try to keep them in various places so that, if I wanted to do this, while, say on the road somewhere, then I could do that. Okay, sorry. I will eventually get to the topic at hand. So this dress has a tiny little yoke, these itty bitty cap sleeves. Now, because it has these little whatevers, it also is lined so that the back of those things don't scratch that delicate skin. A couple of tags that, of course, I will salvage. And maybe I'll do that first. I'll cut those off because I'm not probably going to take this seam binding off. Is that seam binding? No, that's not seam binding. That's bias tape. So I'm cutting as close as I can. And I do store these kinds of clothing tags, these fabric ones, in a bin kind of close to my sewing stuff. That's probably not a good place to do it because that's not where I would, that's where I do it, but that's not where I would automatically, it's not in my face enough to remind me to use these things. Okay, so like I said, a yoke, 3 buttons with loops. Oh, and I have to apologize. I've had some of you who are viewers and friends say, you're not exactly in shot. Mo says, move your camera south, not necessarily lower. So hopefully, why don't I stand up and see what you guys can see? Hopefully I'm dead center today. So there are, I think, are some basic sort of standard common sense ways to tackle deconstructing a garment. But of course, they will differ slightly. Boy, this is tough to undo. They will differ slightly depending on how the garment was actually constructed and how many layers and blah, blah, blah. Was it handmade? Was it factory made? And then it's got a contrasting band at the bottom that was stitched these two pieces were stitched together. So I think what I'll do first, the easy part, cutting off the label and taking off the buttons. Aren't you glad you tuned in for that remarkable piece of information? Let's see if I can do this without cutting a hole in the... One other thing I'll say before I get to the topic at hand. I think probably most people have had a cold sore at one point or another. And you know, it's a miserable, ugly thing. And there's a certain degree of pain associated with it. Anyway, the other day I felt that first little, that first little tingling sensation at the corner of my mouth. Now, that's not the only place I get them, on my lip, but, and thank goodness I don't get them often. Typically, I believe, and I don't know if that's based in science or not, that I become more prone to them if I'm run down. Now, I don't consider myself run down at this point, but I do think it would be fair to say that I am stressed. And you know, I'm not going to go on a tangent here, and let's just say world events and the chaos and uncertainty that all of us in the world are feeling at the moment, inflicted by one particular person. And I think it's taking a toll. And I've been consciously trying to tell myself, okay, kid, you can't do anything about it. You, one little speck of a person, can't do anything about it. So at least save your own mental health and try to get over your anger and not dwell on that. Easier said than done. Anyway, I also had to go to the dentist recently because one of the bottom teeth had a superficial crack in it, like on the top chewing surface. And he said, when the dentist saw that, he said, "Oh, that it's shallow. It's, you know, it's not a bad one. It's not a big one, but so I can do that. I can just fix it with a filling," which was, you know, the good news, if if there is good news in a story like that. So anyway, and I've been having jaw pain, so I think from grinding and clenching, and I've talked about that in another video. 80% of people do it, by the way. So waiting for this mouth guard. Anyway, so all of this stuff is happening on the right side of my mouth. I mean, and I went to a massage therapist after the dentist to try to get her to work on, you know, some of those tight jaw muscles. Okay, what I think I'm going to do next is detach this hem section from the main body of the dress. Now, with this overcasting type stitch, sometimes, you know, if the thread gods are smiling down on you, you can find exactly where to sort of break the threads, pull on them, and it'll just go. Like, it'll go until, you know, it'll go for several inches. Instead of doing it, you know, inch by inch, quarter inch by quarter inch. So, and I haven't been able to figure out what the trick is. So I'm just going to pick away at this and keep trying to unlock the secret of this. And I mean, there is literally joy in your heart when it goes that way, because it saves, you know, hours and hours of time. Anyway, so dentist, massage therapist, cold sore, and all of this is happening on the same side of my face. And then yesterday, I don't know what the heck happened yesterday, but I've got this pain behind my right ear. Let me just check my glands. Probably a little swelling in the glands as well. Now, luckily, when I was looking through my home pharmacy, because I thought, oh, I'm sure I've got some kind of cold sore cream. And, you know, if you have had, this isn't the right thread, but I might as well pull it. If you have had cold sores, you know that they are miserable and last, you know, a good week or so. And if you're especially unlucky, one will pop out, you know, at the most inopportune time. You know, maybe when you have a special event to go through, or maybe, you know, photo ops or whatever. Anyway, then I remember, so I thought, okay, I'll go to town. We have a pharmacist, thank goodness, in our tiny little village of 400 people. And I said, what's the best stuff for cold sore? And is it over the counter? Because, of course, I don't have a prescription. And in Alberta, pharmacists have quite a bit of power in terms of prescribing. So he started talking about a pill. Oh, did I find the formula here? It shouldn't be this hard, but anyway, I did make a little bit of progress there. And sometimes it also depends, like it'll work from one side and not from the other. So that's why I keep going back from one end to the other, thinking one of these days I'm going to pull the right string. Anyway, he starts talking about, and he gets a bottle off the counter there, or off the shelf, and shows me, and they're like horse-sized pills, you know, 3/4 of an inch long and kind of thick. And I said, oh, horse pills. And then then it came back to me that he had told me about these in the past. I didn't think, I didn't think he had ever, you know, given them to me before, but the information starts. That file was located and began to open. Then and you know, there's some people that can, my mother was one of them, some people that cannot swallow pills. I'm not one of them. But they were big. And he says, well, there is, you know, another version, I guess, of the same thing, and they're smaller. You'd have to take twice as many. And the miracle, the beauty of this is that you get 4. You take 2, and then 12 hours later, you take the other 2. So, of course, I stayed up kind of past my bedtime watching a comedian on, what was it, on Crave, I guess, or HBO, because I thought, I need a laugh, people. I need a laugh. Anyway, so it turned out that by the time I was actually ready to turn the lights out, it was 12 hours later, and I took my dose sort of almost in the wee hours of the morning. So I have to say, it kind of does seem like it's maybe stopped it or slowed it down in its tracks. I can't say that it's, you know, that everything is all good, but I'm just beginning to wonder. Now, can I show you the name without, I mean, I could write this out for you and show it to you. I guess the point is that nobody comes here for medical advice, and goodness knows you shouldn't. But if I know something that you might not know, I'm happy to tell you. Let me find something to write with. So this, I don't think this is a generic. I won't even attempt to pronounce it. Hope my paper is big enough. It's a long second word. Cyclovir. L-O. sorry, VIR. 1,000 milligrams. And that's the, the 4 tabs. So that's what it is. So I guess maybe, if you're plagued by this and you haven't been told about this option, as opposed to the cream that you put on umpteen times a day, and it lasts 7 days anyway, you might want to ask whoever about that. Where were we here? So, and maybe just before I move on from that, and I think this is a miracle, to be honest. No, it doesn't affect anyone in our household or anyone in my immediate circle of people. But we know that, for instance, diabetics, one of the side effects of diabetes is poor blood circulation, which means that if a person hurts themselves, the usual bump, scrape, crack in the skin or whatever, quite often those things do not heal well or maybe at all in diabetics, and they can end up with some really, I need to maybe be a little more gentle here. They can end up with some ulcerated sores that can even lead to amputation of a limb. So nothing to fool around with. There are compression stockings and so on that the guy I used to go to that made my orthotics also sold diabetic socks. So there are things that help people. But it's also a drain on the healthcare system because these people, probably tend to be older and don't have the skill, the flexibility, the training to do their own wound management. So, they're constantly going to somebody, I don't know, nurses, doctors, nurse practitioners, podiatrists, whoever, to get those wounds looked after. Anyway, apparently, I think it was the University of Calgary, I only caught part of the story on TV. They have developed a cream. I wish I would have written that down. It was something like Novosalve, that apparently works like a hot damn on these wounds. And I think because they actually had testimonial type, it worked for me kind of stories as part of this news item, it must already be approved for use in patients, like it's not, just in clinical trials or animal studies or whatever the heck the process is. So I'm thinking, thank God for science and research and the fact that some people are devoting their lives and careers to solving problems that have real world consequences and, are a burden to the healthcare system. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Although, again, if you or someone you care about is in that situation, it might be good to check with Dr. Google and see if it's available in your area. And certainly you'd think that any self-respecting and competent doctor would be switching his patients, diabetic patients, over to something that seems so groundbreaking. Okay, so we are making a bit of headway here. Now, sometimes when I get kind of ticked off and impatient, sometimes I just rip. So should I see if ripping is going to be the answer? I mean, it's obviously separating the pieces, but I still end up with all this thread here. So I might as well just continue pecking away at it. Okay, so the question that my friend had and posed through email was, where do I sell? Now, that's not a simple, that's a complicated question. And I think that the first, as I said earlier, so long ago when this video started, I think the first question that most, or the fork in the road that most people come to is, okay, I've been doing this one. Okay, let's pretend that it's journal making. I've been making journals for, a couple of years. My technique has gotten better. I'm developing a style and what am I trying to say here? A person has expertise, and level of confidence has risen to the point where this even becomes a possibility. So I think, of course, there are those people who think that no matter how lousy they've done something, that it's just genius. We're not talking about people like that. We're talking about people who, have a more realistic take on whether what they're doing is right and good and so on, than people who just think that they know everything and because they did it, it's got to be good. God knows I'm not one of those people. Probably the other extreme, self-critical to the point of inaction or paralysis. I should have also started this with a disclaimer. Now, for the last, I think it's 23 years now, I've been writing a weekly newspaper column. And of course, it's as important, naming your column is as important as naming your child. And we talked about that in a past video. Naming your child, naming your YouTube channel, picking your, Instagram handle, whatever. You kind of want to have done a bit of done some thinking about it. Some of them are so darn clever. I think, I wish I'd have thought of that. But obviously it has to work for whatever your intentions are. Anyway, the name of my column is From Where I Sit. And it's actually a built-in disclaimer because, of course, when you write an opinion column, that's exactly what it is. It's just one woman's opinion. You can like it, you can agree with it, you can think I'm full of what. You can, do whatever you want with it. And just as an aside, it always surprises me when I bump into, real people in the street, in a place of business, wherever, and they say, I just love reading your column. I'm thinking, I just write it, I send it to the editor, and I don't think about it again. I always kind of forget that, there is an end user here. There is somebody who's going to read this and either think, oh my God, the woman's a genius, or she's full of crap, or something within that spectrum. So, what I'm about to say on this whole topic of, are you ready to sell? Or no, I don't want anyone to have the slightest misunderstanding that I have the answers or that I'm prescribing a path or I'll prescribe cold sore medication, but I won't prescribe this. So in other words, I'm going to personalize. I'm going to say, I'm going to make it about me, because I did go through this whole process myself. So I'm not directing this at anyone. I'm talking about my own experience. knowing full well that not everybody thinks like I do. But we have to start somewhere. Okay, so eventually, like I said, you've been watching a lot of videos. You bought all those things that you thought you needed because you saw them on somebody's thrift haul. You've amassed these supplies. You've got the tools. You've been using them. You haven't just been, sitting on them. And it seems that, every mistake you've made, you've learned something from it. And you try not to do that again because, of course, there are more mistakes to make, especially as a beginner. So eventually, and again, it depends. That's going to be an individual journey and an individual timeline. When, how long before you think, you know what, I would be proud to have someone have this. And I think, obviously that's going to be different for different people. So I remember one of the very first, and I'm not going to name her because, it's not my story to tell. But she had health issues. So a therapist said, I don't know if it was a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist. It must have been an occupational therapist that said, well, why don't you make books? Oh, there, look, I had got a few inches off. And one thing led to another. And of course, she has a successful digital business and so on, and makes beautiful stuff. And I'm sure will live happily ever after. Still has those same health issues, mind you, which are potentially debilitating. But I know in our conversations that she said that, she would start making these things and she would just give them away to, friends and relatives kind of thing. And that is, I think, what a lot of us do in the beginning. Now, that also assumes that you have those kinds of people in your sphere who, number one, would even accept such a thing, be open-minded enough to try to understand what it's about and why, and who would either appreciate it or at least fake it so as not to crush your hopes and dreams. Anyway, so that's one way. Because let's face it, did you see? That wasn't a sewing thread. It was a fabric thread. I thought I just had broken the code here. Anyway, not everybody has those kinds of victims in their lives where you can just pawn these early projects off on people. But we all have a finite amount of space. We have a finite amount of space for our supplies, for our work area, and for our finished products. So in the beginning, I thought to myself, each one of these things is a labor of love. It was also a means to an end. It was a way to try different styles and techniques. And frankly, some worked better than others. So, but they're all my babies. And, most of us don't give our babies away or sell our babies, which is a good thing. So they just were piling up. And because we live in such a consumer-driven, I guess we have a consumer mindset, and we know that as much as we like to tell ourselves, oh, we're doing this, we do art for our souls, for our mental health, our physical health. We do it for the therapeutic value that we have. by engaging in this kind of activity. You know, we're not breaking into cars or houses. We're doing something good in the world. But I think that because of the drilled in the drilled in mindset, we also know that money is a way of keeping score. So, as somebody who's had a bricks and mortar store, and this is going to sound harsh and it's going to sound critical or cynical or something, but I will tell you that if you come into my store and you tell me, or even if you go to my Etsy shop or see me at a table at a Christmas market or something, and you tell me, oh, that is so beautiful, I cannot deposit your compliments into my bank account. Full stop. So, yes, it's nice to have the, that feedback, especially if it's sincere. It's not people, blowing smoke or buttering you up or, whatever, because we know that people do that. We know that we've done that at times. My, you have a beautiful baby. When in fact, maybe it's not such a beautiful baby. Anyway, we've all done it. So it's not a criticism, but the reality is that compliments don't pay the bills. So it's by putting your whatever out there, not your baby, but your product, it's a way to test the market. It's a way to keep score. It's a way to find out whether anyone values what you're doing enough to crack open their wallets and actually part with some cold hard cash. And I'm sorry if this sounds like, tough love or whatever, but it's true. I don't want to delude myself, nor do I want to string you along into thinking that any of this is easy, because it's not. I mean, yes, there are those stars in the field that have had, untold success and it was overnight and so on. That doesn't really happen for most of us. It's, we do it the old hard way, like they sometimes say about musicians. Yeah, 25-year overnight success. So you start singing at the school concert and then maybe you sing in a tavern somewhere, and you put in what Malcolm Gladwell calls those 10,000 hours of apprenticeship to suddenly become an overnight success. So deciding to sell is a personal decision. And I think maybe a person needs to think, maybe do a little navel gazing, a little soul searching. Why? Why am I wanting to sell? Am I trying to recoup some of the money I've invested in tools and supplies? Is the world waiting with bated breath to have access to something you've created because it is so unbelievably awesome? The world has never seen anything like it before. Are you selling, excuse me, for a very practical reason, like you need the space, you need the stuff out of here, and you've given as much away as you possibly can to anyone who remotely might understand or appreciate what it is that they're getting? So, okay, maybe you've done the hard thinking, the listening, be still and know that I'm God. Be still and hear the inner truth. And so you've decided, yes, I'm going to dip my toe in the world of retail. And of course, retail has changed. Now, of course, a person could maybe in your area, maybe there's a little boutique type store. Maybe there are people who are stores that take stuff on consignment. So that's one way to get your physical product in front of, potential customers. So there's that. And it's small scale and presumably a pretty, see, I always get excited and then it doesn't work. That would, no matter what way you try selling, you're going to get some pretty immediate feedback. You're either going to make a sale or you're not. You're going to sit there wondering. And I remember having a conversation via text with another maker and saying, I think I need to put my stuff out there, because near as I can tell, no one is ever going to come to this farm near Andrew, knock on my door and say, oh, by the way, have you got anything to sell me? It's not going to happen. So I need to be the one getting my stuff out there. So there are, like I said, maybe a consignment type setup with, a real bricks and mortar store, a creative focus type thing. A business with a creative focus. So, your journal fits with what the store is trying to do and the customer that comes in there, in that way. Another option, of course, are the, seasonal sales. So, a Mother's Day sale, a Christmas sale, those kinds of things. I don't know, to be honest, if anyone has ever tried to sell a journal, say at a yard sale or garage sale or something like that, because, I think that's a different customer, a different expectation. I know I go to a garage sale expecting that I'm going to get some awesome prices and, again, that could just be me. Equally as hard as all of that, assuming that, well, I guess maybe before I talk about pricing, I should talk about some other places. So, of course, the big name is Etsy. Now, you don't have to go far on YouTube to find videos that just absolutely bash the platform, are highly critical of all the add-on charges, the commissions, the fees, the listing fee, the blah, 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 on it goes. And I know that there are, people have two ways of looking at it. Yes, Etsy is an expensive route to take to sell something. However, it also potentially, again, there are no guarantees unless you throw even more money at it, it potentially gets your product in front of a lot of eyes. And of course, when you're setting up a listing, you have the option of choosing whether you'll sell it in your own country, which is, of course, the simplest, or whether you will sell worldwide. Now, the beauty of choosing the worldwide option is that in their all that money grubbing that they do, they provide the support for things like tariffs. They provide the support for, remitting Like in Canada, we have goods and service tax that gets remitted to, I have a GST number, and, I have to remit what I collect. Other countries have similar type things. And I know that somebody from, what country was it? Somebody from Europe bought one of my journals, and I was just so grateful that I wasn't the poor schnook that had to figure out what additional, tariffs and fees I might have to charge. I know that early, several years ago, I bought some French ephemera from a merchant, an Etsy merchant in France. And I was more than a wee bit ticked off that and this was multiple hundreds of dollars, because I figured if I'm, obviously she gave me a better price the more I bought, but also, I figured shipping and so on. Anyway, and then as this package entered Canada, I was assessed some duties. So I reached out to her, and, long story short, we came to a compromise, and she absorbed some of the cost and I absorbed some of the cost, and I guess we'll both live happily ever after. So I don't want to have to be the one to figure out all those complicated things, depending on where where this customer might live. So there's that. I have to say that with all this tariff, I'm just going to say it, bullshit, that has been going on since January, there was not a peep that came out of Etsy until the other day. And I mean not a peep. My shipping company has been doing webinars and sending emails and doing blog posts and coming up with forms, template forms, and just literally doing all the things that you would want and need somebody to do. And I'm thinking, have those people at Etsy been in a coma and they just now awoke and they just now realize that, hey, this is going to matter to those of us in Canada and the US who are trying to sell stuff to each other. So majorly disappointed in their lack of seller support in that regard. Now, another thing that is open to, finally, it's a miracle. That's what I was trying to explain. That's what I was trying to hope for. So now we know that was going from left to right. So if I don't turn this dress around, I could try making that happen again. Now there is also this second line of straight stitching. Anyway, so if people know Angela, the traveling crafter, you probably know that she has something called, I've used the analogy of like a mall. So she's a mall owner, and we can be tenants. We can have a shop in her mall. Oh, that's how ironic. I have only about an inch left to go here when I finally discovered Anyway, so she has a more competitive commission and so on, and has, provided some training and some, there are mechanisms for building relationships and community within both the people who are selling there and the people who are buying there. Now, honestly, I'm not going to criticize it because I truly haven't given it my best shot. I just cannot do all this social media stuff in addition to everything else I'm trying to do. So I'm terrible on Facebook. I can probably count on two hands the number of times I've done anything in the chat on District. Instagram is kind of, I'm a wee bit better there. Coffee, not so hot either. And, so I'm not one of those people who's going to blame a selling platform or an app or anything like that when I can't, in all honesty, say that I have done my part or been, so active or whatever. So I'm prepared to take my share of the blame, or acknowledge that I played a role in, it happened again. That it takes two to succeed or fail or whatever. So I think a person needs, if you're thinking about selling, you also need to understand that just because, remember that Kevin Costner, build it and they will come? What was that? Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. Well, no, that's not how it goes. Not in the real world. Except for those miracle cases. It is hard work to, what we would like to say is build a platform. So for instance, if you were to write a book and you're making your pitch to the publisher, please publish this wonderful book of mine. I'm so darn talented. Part of what they would consider, well, aside from the quality of the actual writing, is, do you have any sort of a platform? Do you have a following, an existence, a persona out there in the real world? Because if you've been in your, living on the back 40, writing this on a manual typewriter, using papyrus paper, and, nobody knows who you are or what you are, or they've never heard of you because you haven't done all that legwork to build name recognition, that would definitely be a factor against them signing you, because you're starting from zero or maybe less than zero. However, if you already have a following, that is better. Now, assuming you get that book published and it doesn't flop, you now have another plank, or whatever we want to call it, in your platform. So then now when you're trying to maybe establish yourself as a speaker, particularly if you wrote a nonfiction book and maybe you could go on the conference circuit, you can say, well, look, I've sold this many copies of my book. I have this many followers on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. And so it goes. So everything you do cross-pollinates and multiplies, by some factor, I don't know what it is, with everything else you're doing. If you haven't done anything, well, 0 times 0 is 0. So there's that. So again, just because you put you finally take your baby, your precious little baby, and you're going to well, okay, no, maybe, yeah, okay, I'm going to put it out there. That doesn't mean anybody thinks your baby is so damn great. There are millions of babies to choose from. So why would anyone pick your baby with the crossed eyes and the buck teeth and the whatever? It's a combination of supply and demand. It's a combination of price point. You know, if a person prices their stuff low enough, there's probably a buyer. You know, it's sort of that analogy from real estate. All of us, and I'm going to say this because I believe it's true, all of us want to get as much as we possibly can when we're selling, and we want to pay as little as we can when we're buying. It's human nature, and let's not pretend otherwise. So, is your stuff, does it warrant the price you're asking for it? Now, as somebody who's had Christmas journals sitting in both District and Etsy, unsold, I'm going to have to say no. Although, will wonders never cease? Before when the first tariffs were announced, and then of course there was the flip-flop and the delay to March 4th, somebody in the US bought one of my Christmas journals that was listed on Etsy in February. Now, I never saw that coming. How? Why? I was glad to sell it, and I was glad that I was able to ship it before this fiasco hadn't progressed any further, where she would have had to pay the U.S. government a tariff on that purchase. So, and even further to that, people who have ordered other things from my Etsy shop, like suddenly I sold them a bunch of Aunt Martha's transfer kits. And my dyed paper is the thing I sell most often, my vegetable dyed paper. I was so grateful that these people did it before the whole tariff thing came into effect. Anyway, that's just a complicating factor, a huge, unnecessary, complicating factor right now. But it doesn't change the basics that I'm trying to sort of talk about here in this long and rambling video. And that would be a legitimate part of, a critical part of the thought process that a person should be going through. Okay, so I've never done it, but apparently some people sell through eBay. So we know that none of these platforms do anything for nothing. You will, no matter where you're selling, and of course you can look for lower commissions and handling fees and maybe fewer regulations and, you know, maybe more customer support or whatever. All those factors play into this. You can look for that, you know, do some research and find out where you think you might fit the most naturally. Like, for instance, and I say coffee. Some people say coffee. I don't know. Tomato. I don't know which it is. I just think when people say, buy me a coffee, then maybe the pronunciation is supposed to be coffee. Whatever. KO-FI. So on that platform, you don't pay anybody a commission. You get all the money. Now, of course, there is some sort of a thing where you could donate something to coffee, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I've never explored that. I never did it. I don't know. I have to say I have sold next to nothing through coffee. So is that the place to be? I don't know. Maybe it's a case of you get what you pay for. I don't know. I think some people do well there. And there are as many results with each of these methods as there are people trying to do them. Now, when I was paying a little more attention to Instagram, I would see that sometimes people there seems to be some way to sell stuff through Instagram. Now, I've never looked into that. Don't know what is involved, so I'm a poor one to say anything. I mean, I can't say anything about that. I guess for some people it works. I know that there are other people who will show something in their, if they have a YouTube channel, will, okay, I guess it's called a drop sale. It's something I've considered, but I haven't yet done. There are people, incidentally, let's do a shout out for Sarah at New England Junk Journals. She has a drop sale happening right now. So, check it out. I know that Susie, sorry, Susie, sent me the name of somebody that she has bought things through or subscribed to who does drop sales. And this woman apparently is willing to help me, at least with information. But, it seems that when I have something, okay, we all wake up in the morning and we have a choice about what we do. And we choose whatever it is to do first for a variety of reasons. Maybe we choose it as a procrastination tactic. Maybe we choose it based on whether we have a pain behind our ear and a cold sore blooming. Maybe we decide what to do based on our energy level, our state of mind that particular day. Are we worried or whatever? So we decide what to do. I find that I tend to go with my gut. If I'm, for instance, during my years as a festival coordinator, if I needed to write an email to somebody or make a phone call, and I knew that it would, this is kind of important. If I got right on it and did it, well, that was good, obviously. But if I kept stalling, if I kept finding other things to do, I found that it was something usually well-founded, inexplicable, but well-founded in my intuition saying, don't do it. The time isn't right. Like maybe maybe my message or my approach or my pitch that day would have been the wrong one. Who knows? The universe works in funny ways. Same thing, and this is obviously a little detour on this discussion, but it's just like if I'm in Edmonton, which is the city closest to me, if I'm in Edmonton and I have some time to spare, I might, and depending where I am in the city, I might think, oh, there's a thrift store around here. I haven't been there for ages. Sometimes I get a feeling, an indication, a nudge, whatever, a tap on the shoulder, saying, you should go here. And other times I could be driving right back past the front door and I will not go in. Now, of course, I have no way of knowing if I missed a Picasso that was in the dollar bin of paintings. I don't know that. I do know that when I have the feeling that, oh yeah, I should go check that out, or I should go into that place, I have typically scored. It's not been a dud outing. So I guess what I'm saying is sometimes we have to just be quiet and listen to what the universe or our gut or our heart is trying to tell us. So back to the selling. I remember, now I wish I could think of the woman's name. Somebody that I'm subscribed to did a very instructive, a tough love kind of video, which I hope this is too, video about selling and about pricing. So she too talked about, big platforms like Etsy. Downside is the fees. Upside is the fact that if you can get your product noticed among all that competition, your thing is visible to so many hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes that, they earn the fee that they're charging. And she also, now, I guess she's at the point in her life where, or in her journey where, I think things probably sell just the minute they're offered for sale. And there are those people out there. I'm not one of them, clearly. Where they almost have, I don't want to say like a timed thing, but they'll do a flip through and they'll say, well, this is going to be available in my shop at such and such a time, and then whatever the time zone is, and trigger finger, whoever is the fastest and I guess has the most money, can buy that particular journal. That's probably a very nice and comfortable and cushy place to be. I don't think that happens for many of us, or it certainly hasn't happened to me. So, again, I'm not trying to be a rain on your parade, or I don't want to come across as a complainer or, sad or whatever. It is what it is. Again, if I priced my product to the point that, something ludicrously low, probably everything would sell. But am I honoring myself and my effort if I do that? Am I acknowledging and taking into account, okay, now I've reached the armhole on both sides. So what I'm going to do is cut along there, or should I just cut upwards? Well, I'm going to need to separate front from back, so I think I'll just cut circular around here. Now, I could try to cut as close as possible to the stitching. Maybe I should do that from the wrong side. But let's not forget that if I maybe cut a wee bit wider, that could be a decorative type thing too. Anyway, I think I'm just going to, and you see how soft and thin this fabric is. I could probably cut these with school scissors. They would, those blunt things that we all had in grade 1. Anyway, I'm just cutting along here from the wrong side. Now, I'm sure that Kim, who's done a lot of this, Kim Newberg, or others, maybe have a different approach to how they would have done this, but hey, that's what makes us unique. Anyway, so pricing. So basically this woman was saying, and again, that's where I started to, like Teresa, former real estate agent. Teresa would tell you that if your house isn't selling, it's because you've listed it at the wrong price. And we all know that, as I've said before, things will sell when they are priced the right way. And of course, that's a simplistic way of saying it, but essentially that is the truth. So the lady is saying that, it's hard work to sell stuff. You have to do your research. You have to price your product appropriately. And if it's not selling, it's because people aren't seeing the value in it just yet. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not worth it. It could also, well, let's see, did that come out right? I guess, it's like most other things. If, for instance, you were a painter and you even use Van Gogh as an example. Some of the people who are viewed as the world's greatest, even hundreds of years later, didn't sell any of their stuff during their lifetime. They were not, maybe they were trying something different. Maybe their style hadn't yet been appreciated or whatever. And so, they died, never knowing any critical or financial success. And that could just as easily happen to us. And we also know that sometimes in the early years of a person's career as an artist, and I'm going to say that, whether you're a fine artist, a writer, some people may see value in it, or see potential in it, not value, potential in it, and decide, this is an up-and-comer. I want to get in on the ground floor while this particular person's paintings, journals, are affordable. Like, I think that there are people, again, how would I know? They're long sold by the time I would ever see them, that are getting hundreds and hundreds of dollars for their stuff. And I would venture to say that their stuff is no better, I'm going to go out on a limb here, no better than mine, no better than yours. It's just a case of they've built that name recognition. Maybe they were some of the early people on the scene. They've been at it for 10, 15 years. So how can a newbie, or even a 3 or 4-year-old, and I mean that in the sense of 3 or 4 years of experience, possibly compare themselves to somebody who was maybe a pioneer in this and has made hundreds and has done all the legwork of promotion and so on, and thousands of videos and all the subsidiary kind of stuff like digitals and all that, and fabric bundles and whatever. Done all of that and obviously have earned that standing in the community. Is that right? Is that fair? Well, I'm not going to say anything about that. It is what it is. We're not going to change that. And playing the victim or feeling sorry for ourselves and saying, well, gee, that's not fair. My stuff is good too. Who does that help? Where does that kind of thinking possibly get us? None of us want to be victims or fall into the poor me scenario. And there is a school of thought out there as well. Okay, this is what we have so far. So what I'll probably do at this point is just cut this. Okay, let me think this through. Do I want to cut that off, or do I want to... I think I'm just going to cut across the shoulder seam. I'm not going to worry about taking it apart. Because I think I would like to keep the yoke intact, and number one, and look at this lovely thread. It will also make it easier because, less bulk to carry around. So at this point, now look at how little girls' dresses are. They're so short and fat, short and wide. So this piece of the front part of this dress at its widest point is 21.5 inches. Now, at some point, I slow down and I stop myself because I begin to think, okay, now I have a better idea of what is actually possible here. just trying to catch these loose threads that are still clinging. What is possible here? Because I don't want to do something that is either unnecessary labor or something that you can't undo, and it kind of spoils what the possibility. So we know that obviously 21 inches is long enough for 2 journals, probably. You know, they might not be as big as you'd hope, but what possibilities exist with this yoke and this button placket closure? So, because my mind is elsewhere, and because I've been talking nonstop for 3 days now, just kidding. I know it might feel like that, but it hasn't been that long. I'm going to not touch this any further because I might get an absolutely brilliant idea, and I don't want... Oh, see, now that I've cut the little cap sleeve off, we can see... Oh, there is nothing on the back side where these things were. Maybe they're... I don't know how they hang on there. They're metal, but there's nothing on the back. There's no roughness or anything. So I was wrong about that. So as far as this little dress is concerned, I'm going to stop on this particular piece and think. You know, because this is a natural finished thing here. So, you know, do I cut it narrower and sew this onto a piece of paper and let it become a very interesting pocket? Watch, I'm going to end up sewing the buttons back on. So that was probably an unnecessary bit of something that I did there. Anyway, let me fold this up, look at the other piece, and wind this video up. And, you know, for the woman who asked the question, I don't know if I am helping or, like we used to say, clear as mud, because it's not a simple question. And, I mean, there's no simple answer. So many factors come into play. And then I think ultimately a person just has to say to themselves, what have I got to lose by trying? You know, worst case scenario, you put something, you open an Etsy store or whatever, and you put something out there and nobody wants it. Well, does that mean you curl up and die? No. It just means that nobody wanted that at that price, at this, maybe they don't even know you exist. So I think we have to sort of, you know, toughen up to some degree. I think we have to remain hopeful. I think those of us that are more likely to be the, you know, the number crunchers, the people who study all the analytics and that, you know, if that turns your crank, go for it. To be honest, nothing that I'm doing here is putting food on our table or clothing us. That's not to say that I won't take all the money I can get, you know, because let's face it, money does improve quality of life, and it is a way to keep score. But it's not like this is my livelihood. So I do this for the love of doing it. If somebody has the means to buy what I'm selling and have a piece of my contribution to this world of bookmaking, then that warms my heart. No matter what I sell and no matter what price I sell it for, it is never, ever going to cover the cost of the inputs. It's not going to cover a lifetime's worth of experience, the time that is put into this, it's we're not making widgets here. So I think it's trying to find the right balance between, okay, what am I reasonably likely to get for what I'm making based on my the quality of my work, my reputation, my standing, my visibility in the marketplace, and what can I live with in terms of the price. So of course, would getting $300 for a journal be better than getting $45? Of course it would. And anyone who says otherwise is lying. But what, would $100 for that thing, is that something you could live with? Is that, in your heart of hearts, just based on your time and the and input costs, and even if you're working for a fraction of minimum wage, can you live with that? And if the answer is yes, then there you have your answer in terms of pricing. If, as I said, you're one of those people who loves to study reports and stats and demographics and all of that, more power to you, go for it. That's not how I want to spend my time. I'm doing what I want to please myself. And if there are people out there who appreciate what I'm doing on my channel and choose to subscribe and listen and follow and comment, well, then you're my people. And if what I do and how I do it doesn't appeal to you, hey, free country. Find your people someplace else. I'm not going to contort myself to fit a certain mold, to do what is hot and now. I'm doing what I want because those are the terms I've chosen to live my life on. And I'm not saying that that's the right way. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm not saying that if you choose any other method that you're wrong and I'm right, because that too would be bullshit. If you are using these potential sales as secondary income, if this is helping feed and clothe your family, then you have a different motivation than I do, and you need to take a more business-like and perhaps cold-blooded look at how you're doing things. How fast can you turn around a product? Are there ways to, I hate to use the phrase, but are there ways to cut corners? Do you do less decorating to keep your hours of labor, blood, sweat, and tears, to a minimum to help keep your costs down? Those are decisions that only you can make. And I guess it goes back to what I said so long ago. This is just my opinion. I think that if there's any value in what I've said, the value comes in the fact that I've been throwing the hypotheticals out there. I've been throwing the potential considerations, the potential factors to look at. But those are questions. Those aren't answers. So whether you want to, if you have a channel, you have a few more options open to you. You have, and assuming that you've got more than just your relatives who have subscribed, and trust me, getting subscribers is not for the faint of heart either. For most of us, it takes time. And we have to be consistent in our content making. But anyway, if you have a channel, you can use that as your selling vehicle. You can obviously flip throughs is like a little commercial for what you have, and you can tell people how they can find it. You could try saying, if you're interested in this, reach out to me by email. Or it's going to be listed in my shop here, or here. Check it out there. I know that there are some people that you'd be hard-pressed to find a price on anything they sell because it's all a very private email type transaction. Oh, I'm interested in such and such, and I guess they arrive at a price between the two of them, and that's how that goes. So I don't know. Also talked about the idea of drop sales, and I think I will try that just because, I like making videos, so that's just another type of video. So I think you should also expect as potential buyers that if a person is sort of selling direct to you, like in other words, they're not going through a selling platform, I think you can expect that you would be paying less because they're not having to build in they're not having to pad the price to pay for overhead like commissions and fees. So, that probably is more win-win for both customer and seller. This is the yoke that's coming off here. Now, with a shape like this, a person could sew that and or let it be, sew it into a signature, sew it together and let it be a pocket, so the possibilities exist. Or cut it up and use it in snippets or make ruffles or whatever. You know what to do with fabric scraps and bigger pieces of fabric. I think by the time I finish this last half inch or so, I'm going to wind this down because honestly, I think I've said everything that I wanted to say, and if I have to smack my forehead after I upload this and think, oh, why didn't I tell them this? Well, I'm going to be annoyed, number one. I'm going to have another pain in my head. And I will especially be annoyed that I missed sharing another angle, another way to look at things. So if that were to happen, because goodness knows it does happen, I will add any additional points in the description box. So maybe, especially in this video, just check there in case I did have another eureka moment. So that was the longest non-answer you can probably ever expect to see in your lifetime. Because I can't tell you what to do. I hardly can tell myself what to do. And I think that, excuse me, that a person just needs to go cautiously, test the waters, and pretty soon you will start beginning to get a gut feel and maybe some actual data that tells you whether you're on the right track or whether you need. Now, the flip side of pricing is when people underprice their stuff because they're so afraid of having it remain unsold. Like I have journals that are listed and I'm thinking, I was pushing the boundary, pushing the envelope as far as, what I listed them for. Will I run a sale at some point? Yeah, likely. Will I let them languish there? What a lovely word. Will I let them languish there until I become rich and famous? And then people think, oh, I want one of her early works. Look, they're so much cheaper than the thousands she's garnering now. And of course, I'm being facetious here. But so I would caution against underpricing yourself, because I think ultimately you could be backing yourself into a corner. You could be finding that because you've underpriced it, you can't keep up doing that. The orders are coming fast and furious, or the demand is there, but you can't physically keep up doing it because, we're not machines. We can only do what we can do. So that's another thing. Plus, it probably serves to devalue the work of your colleagues and your other people that you're competing against. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm afraid to stand up and check the time, but I will. Oh, okay. Well, I guess it could have been worse. And if you want to hear me talk like Alvin the Chipmunk, then just turn up the speed on the video. Anyway, you can see that it took an hour and a half to do this simple little dress. So this too is not for the faint of heart. This is, I've got a lot of possibilities here. I think that this is obviously a great activity to do when you are watching, a comedy special, or if you don't mind thread and the mess and so on. If you're a passenger in a car, that would be another way to another time and place to do that. So as you know, I've got 4 more little dresses to do, and I will get to them eventually. Anyway, my dear person who asked the question initially, I hope that I've helped to some degree. I hope that if you stumbled across it elsewhere, other people, if you have found this video and actually stuck it out till the end, I hope that it has provided you food for thought, some different ways to look at things, because, I'm old. I'm really old. So I've got life experience. I have an advanced degree from the School of Hard Knocks. So I'm qualified. I'm not qualified. No, I do. I'm practical. I'm mature. I'm sensible. And yeah, it's life experience. Anyway, and there it is for what it's worth and from where I sit. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.